So honestly, I don't think we're even seeing the sell-off happening yet. I think we're just seeing some of the energy from the IPO dying down. I don't even think we're seeing the sell-off yet. Here's the reason why. If you go back to January and February, you go back to January, DWAC was trading at like $15 to $17, right? The SEC hadn't cleared things. There was fraud allegations against the CEO of DWAC. Back in January, when the board announced that they had fired the CEO and were replacing him, and that the fraud allegations had been resolved, and this dude's out and we're resolving this with the SEC, everybody knew that, hey, things are going to start moving now. You have to remember, DWAC went public back in December of 2021, and its sole purpose even back then was to take Truth Social public. This deal's been sitting on ice since the end of 2021, almost 3 years now, or just over 2 years now, two and a half years. So it's been sitting there for a long time, and that stock was down at its low last summer. It was down to $12 a share. So when they announced that the CEO was gone, the fraud allegations had been resolved, anybody who'd been paying attention knew that, okay, there's going to be movement now. It jumped up to about $35 a share, and that's basically where it's been for a good while now. The SEC announced that they had approved the transfer back in February. I think it was February 15th or 16th. They announced that they had approved the transfer. Things started moving. It kind of settled in somewhere between $34 and $38 a share was kind of the average price up until last week. So that's kind of where I would expect it to settle in at, because anybody who was buying, expecting to get in based on the Truth Social merger, they were getting in back when it was DWAC. They were getting in a month and a half ago, knowing that this was coming. The big spike in price that you've seen is because of the IPO and the day traders, the meme stock buyers, the day traders. This stock no longer fits the profile that day traders look for. Day traders are typically using algorithms and automated systems to do their trades for them so that they can maximize profits. This stock no longer fits the profile that most day traders look for. Most day traders are looking for a minimum of 3 times the daily average volume. They're looking for a low public float, big volume, lots of liquidity in the market, big, buying the news basically. That's day traders' wet dream, and that's what it was on day one last week. Daily trading volume, daily average volume prior to the IPO, prior to the merger last Tuesday, was 3 million shares. It did 55 million shares of volume last Tuesday when it went live. That's fucking huge. It was trading at 13 times the normal volume, and it fucking shot up. Well, then Wednesday it only did 30 million shares of volume, or Wednesday it did 30 million shares, and Thursday it did, I think, 15. So that volume has been decreasing, and now today, after the long weekend, everybody wants out. There's no good news coming out. There's no more people coming in. The trade volume is slowing down. That means the day traders are going to be looking for an exit strategy. So that's basically what it is. Now, I expect it to settle down somewhere in the low to mid 30s. When you start seeing the public float increasing and you start seeing some of these lockup periods expiring, that's when I expect it to tank. Okay, especially when you look at the performance bonuses that are built into the stock agreements, I totally expect it to fucking tank, because they're talking about adding millions upon millions upon millions of new shares based on performance. Well, their performance cutoff is only $12.50 a share. If it does better than $12.50 a share on average for 20 out of 30 days, everybody gets more stock. They get even more stock if it's doing better than $17 a share. So when you look at the expected market capitalization, the expected actual valuation of the company and how many shares are outstanding, and I talked about this before all of this happened, you would end up with a price somewhere between $10 to $13 a share. If the entire public outlay was actually on the market and not locked up, you would be looking at roughly a $13 a share stock. But because there's still only 30-some million shares in the public float, is a much smaller chunk of shares that are actually being traded. Now, again, if we look at the numbers from last week, 55 million shares Tuesday, 30 some million shares Wednesday, another 15 to 18 million shares Thursday. You're talking over 90 million shares of a company that only has 30 million shares in the public float. What does that tell you? That tells you that people weren't buying and holding, people were buying and selling and passing the same shares around back and forth over the course of that 3 days. That only gets you so far, especially when there's no good news coming out, there's no new people coming into the market, there's no new money coming into the market. That's only going to last so long before the day traders say, okay, that was fun. What's the next stock that we're going to hit? What's the next stock that I can make a couple bucks on? Because this isn't it. The money's drying up, the liquidity's drying up, the action's drying up. Let me go find another table to play at. That's exactly what it is. It's no different than being in Vegas and walking through walking through the floor and hopping from blackjack table to blackjack table looking for the hot table. It's what it is. It's the same fucking thing, but using the stock market. So once the table dries up and the table goes cold, they're looking for the next hot table. And that's exactly what's going on now. Those people are getting out. Think about if you bought DWAC back when it was $12, $13, $15 a share. Would you still be holding on to it? Fuck no. You would have gotten out. You would have gotten out last Tuesday or Wednesday when it was hitting high 70s. Like, fuck, man. You know what I mean? So there's no new buyers entering the game. There's no new buyers entering the market. That means there's no liquidity for the day traders to play on. They're gonna be leaving soon. And again, that means that the price is going to come back down to something more reasonable. And once some of those shares, some of those 100 million shares that are still locked up, once those lockup periods start expiring and people start being able to dump those shares, that's going to be the sell-off. That's going to be when shit really hits the fan. Because, hey, this is, the market's getting diluted. There's a shitload of new shares on the table. It's not a competitive market with only 30 million shares. There's another 100 million that aren't even being traded yet. That's going to be when the sell-off happens.